man. It's all good. Nice to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out. It's always good to be around the 816 brethren of Kansas City, the Fraternal Order of Kansas City people.
Man, I'm so glad that you realize that. It's just a coincidence, man. I grew up in Kansas City. First started playing bugle in Kansas City.
Okay.
Back,
All right.
yeah, I left Kansas City. I was born in '59. I left in 1970.
Okay. So we could peel back all of those layers. And
Hmm.
before we get into your new album, I got to tell you, the Ways In has been a wonderful listen. I'm still a guy that has a CD player in my car. So my son, his name is Miles for obvious reasons, and he loves listening to the jazz. It's like, he actually had to get a dental procedure yesterday,
Okay.
and he was getting really nervous, and he told the dentist, "Can you put jazz on your phone so I can listen to it?" So it's his comfort, man.
Oh,
But
good, good, man. I'm glad you guys are into the music.
yeah, yeah, I love the album. And before we get into the album, I want to know, as a musician, how did you survive the last 3.5 years? How did you get through the pandemic and how did it change you?
Um, well, that's kind of simple. First of all, I'm a vested union member, musicians union. So the musicians union, what do you call that? Unemployment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kicked in pretty easy. And then I invested in all this new equipment, like a new computer, new Wi-Fi and all that stuff, so I could do Zoom meetings and do gigs, from my apartment. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have this microphone. I wouldn't know anything about this setup. So yeah, I did a lot of things via Zoom and some very interesting. I did a Louis Armstrong project too. That was put on by the Louis Armstrong Foundation, and it was a panel. I was part of a panel and demonstration. So I did a lot of Zoom stuff and and stuff like that.
Right on. So talk to me about this album. How did you artistically stitch this one together?
Well, first of all, the pandemic had something to do with it because
Yeah.
this was supposed to be done years ago,
Okay.
and what it was, it's actually my brother, my oldest brother, is is a music fanatic, and he's the one, actually it was his baby, so he wanted to produce a record. I i put the music out there. I organize everything and he would pay for it. Okay, and he loves jazz,
Yeah.
and us being from Kansas City, we got a strong jazz connection. My parents were in the jazz, and my brother has a great jazz collection, and I have a great jazz collection. So to make a long story short, my brother produced it, and it was supposed to be done years ago, and I just got together my friends, and we put together this project, but it was about 3 years in the making.
So what are you hoping the listener gets from this album?
Versatility, um, um, spirituality, um, yeah, because there's a lot of different feels on the record, and also I tried to put my ego aside. I want people to do, because I had another really great trumpet player on the record, and it's just so nice to have the camaraderie with the person who plays the same instrument, and just to have that, and uh, that's what I really want everybody to people to take away from it. Just let your ego down. I mean, it was great to have my friend Jeremy Pelt on it.
Yeah.
He's a also, it was called The Ways In because he's one of the ones that I helped get gigs, and when he first came to town and all that stuff. So just versatility and spirituality, and because there's so many different things on the record. And I was always looking for, like, old school mutes, my different mutes I use, just versatility
Yeah.
musically.
So this whole jazz journey began for you in Kansas City, Missouri with
Yeah.
the bugle. Talk to
Mhm.
me about the beginnings of this, the jazz seeds and how it grew early on before you left Kansas City.
Yeah, well, my sister's husband just it was just a fluke. I used to live on 43rd in Cleveland. Anyway, uh, my sister's husband just by chance brought home a bugle, and I just started messing around with it because I saw on TV at that time Louis Armstrong was still playing, and I could see the embouchure. I could see physically how he was doing it. So watching on TV, and I kind of figured out the basic air structure and embouchure. And so basically, I was just fluting around with the flugelhorn, and I mean with the bugle, and I figured out how to get a sound. You know, you know, and um, so that was the first uh, that was the first seed that was planted just by accident.
Yeah.
I just learned how to play the bugle because it didn't have no valves.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to worry about the valves. All I had to worry was just blowing. And I got that together kind of fast. Yeah. So and then when I moved to California, um, I got a little bit more serious,
Yeah.
and I got a better trumpet. Actually, I my first trumpet I got in Kansas City at Beacon's Music, and it was a con trumpet. So and then I got more serious about it. The next year, my family moved to San Mateo, California.
Okay.
And then I had some really good music teachers like Woody Shaw. So it just kind of developed from there.
Yeah. So yeah, you went to San Diego after that and eventually got to New
Right.
York. But prior to that, what was it about Kansas City that you liked the best? What was it that nurtured you in your musical pursuits and just overall, what did you like about Kansas City?
Well, to be honest, I was pretty young at the time, but my parents were into jazz and they used to have parties a lot, musical parties. So I just remember my stereo and my dad's tavern. He had a bar and he would play music. In the Richard Group's home, Misty. I
Yeah.
remember hearing that as a little kid in my dad's bar in Kansas City, and Lee Morgan's Sidewinder.
Yeah.
Those are two things that I really, really remember. And also my parents' record collection. They had a lot of Charlie Parker records, Ahmad Jamal. So I just remember really getting introduced to music, period, even Aretha Franklin
Yeah.
when I was living in Kansas City. And then after that, I came back to visit, and it turns out my parents knew the McFadden's. I don't know if you know Lonnie McFadden.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So my parents grew up with Lonnie's parents.
Okay.
And then we found out that we have a whole musical history
Wow.
of our families getting together. Our parents used to hang out at the old Blue Room
Okay.
together. Yeah,
Yeah.
Lonnie's parents and my parents. And
Okay.
Lonnie's dad was a tap dancer, and he knew my parents really well.
Yeah, they have a dynasty in that family. Yeah, Lonnie's got his own club here. He's
Yeah,
he is one of the best shows I've ever seen in my life
yeah.
between the
I it's
playing and the
called
tapping.
Is it
Yeah.
called Lonnie's Reno Club?
Yes. Yeah.
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 Hmm.
It's wonderful. I went there one time. We went there a few years ago. Man, he is an entertainer to the core of his marrow, man.
Yeah, he sure is. He's always been like that.
Yeah?
Yeah, I've been knowing him. I met him when I went back to visit, which was in 73 or something like that, 74. And he's always been an entertainer. They were tap dancing and singing when they were teenagers.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
and I remember meeting their father,
Yeah. Yeah.
James McFadden.
Yeah.
And the mother and the brothers and all that stuff. I So anyway, we kind of grew up. I didn't grow up with Lonnie when I was living there. I met him when I came back to visit.
Okay. All right. So let me ask you this. What was the first live jazz show that you ever saw that blew you away?
Thad Jones and Mel Lewis, the big band live at the Great American Music Hall in San Francisco.
Wow. What was
Yeah,
that like?
John. Oh, it was great. I mean, that was what got me into music, watching Thad Jones play. John Faddis was, I think, 19 at the time. Pepper Adams was playing baritone. Jerry Dodgen, Sir Roland Hanna. Mel Lewis, George Mraz. I mean,
Wow.
Quentin Butter Jackson. I mean, I could name everybody, but it would take a minute because I have to jog my memory.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
Billy
that
Harper.
wow. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
So that was I think the first thing that blew my mind was Thad Jones, Mel Lewis, in the early '70s at the Great American Music Hall, and Thad is one of my favorites. My new record has a lot of his influence on it.
So you went to San Diego to go to school and then you finally made your way to New York around
Yeah,
85.
yeah, but I spent a little time in L.A. also.
Okay. So
Yeah.
what was that migration like for you? I mean, you're coming from the Midwest, you're going to the West Coast, then you finally make it out east. What was all of that migratory action? How did that help you grow as a musician?
Well, I had a teacher in San Diego that was preparing me for New York. His name was Jimmy Cheatham, and I really wasn't even thinking about. I was still a teenager in San Diego, and I by chance I just got into big bands, and Jimmy Cheatham was Chico Hamilton's musical director. He was also a big band. He subbed for Duke. He was a great trombone player that taught at UCSD. Okay, so Jimmy Cheatham is the one that kind of prepared me mentally to deal with New York and and since he knew I liked big bands, he introduced me to a lot of cats in the Basie band when I was real young because
Yeah.
they used to have this jam session every week in San Diego. So I was being kind of groomed when I was living in San Diego to come to New York, and it was a perfect fit when I made it out here.
Yeah. So after all of these years, what is it that you like the best about being a professional musician? There's so many facets to go into it, but
Mhm.
what really gets you going about being a musician?
Travel
Yeah.
because you learn so much. I lived in Europe for a little while. Um, Travel because you know there's so much out there and so many influences that got me. I mean, whether it's where it comes to cooking, I learned about French food. I lived in Geneva, Switzerland. French wines, red wines, and Cote du Rhônes, and just the culture of being in a lot of different places. And also, I traveled extensively to the point to where it was just fascinating to see how how other people lived. I traveled a lot in Europe through I say through 86 through 2004.
Wow.
You know, I don't travel that much anymore,
Yeah.
but I during that time I spent a lot of time in Europe, and I just learned a lot. I lived there for a little while, and I have a whole bunch of new friends, you
Yeah.
know, from living there. And I'm a people person. Once you really get to know me, so
Yeah.
I got a whole bunch of new friends that I really haven't. And I have a great time reconnecting with them when I go back.
So the one thing about, going to Europe is that there's a different fervor for jazz,
Mhm.
than there is here in the States. How do you feel overall here in 2024 about the state of jazz? I know that people kind of got jolted in the jazz world. People left big cities, and there might have been some concern just because the way the economics work. But what's your sense of how the community is right now?
Um, I'm really in. I really dig everything because first of all, I think it's a very I think it's very together because here in New York, I see a lot of the younger generation coming up, and they are great musicians and they're very respectful. So maybe I'm jumping ahead, but I see jazz in very good hands. I really respect the younger musicians, and uh, I took part in in a thing Wynton Marsalis has called essentially Ellington. It's a Ellington composite is Ellington competition where
Yeah,
these the high school big bands get it, man, and that really just 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 made my heart warm because I started out in the Ellington band,
yeah,
And through this competition, I'm seeing all these younger musicians getting hip to all this obscure Ellington band, all Ellington material, including myself. You
Yeah.
know, I'm learning about the suites and all the obscure Ellington stuff, and so the community. I'm really in favor of where it's going. Um, if that answers your question,
Yeah.
I think it's in a very good community where it's going.
So no matter where you've been in the world, at the end of the day, it's all about this craft, this jazz world. What do you love the best about jazz?
The creativity that's involved, because once you, oh man, this is a great question. Okay, for instance, there's a lot of different aspects. For instance, I played with David Murray.
Hmm.
I played with Sonny Murray. I played with Sam Rivers. So anyway, I just like to bring everything together. For instance, avant-garde with the bebop. And what I really love about music is sometimes when I play something, or if I hear something, or if I it feels like a bright moment as something clicks in me that feels really good. I say, oh man, that was really nice. If I hear something, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's a bright moment. It's a
Uh-huh.
goosebump
Hmm.
that I get. And I think it comes from the basis of creativity, and I love what comes out of people. For instance, I did something on my last record, the record, The Ways In.
Yeah.
I did something spontaneous on the record. I said the horn players just play any note you want, the same rhythm, just this rhythm, any note
Yeah.
you want. And then they did it, and we listened to the playback. Man, I was blown away. I was so happy. I was so happy. It was like I got that goosebump.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned some pretty heavy cats from David Murray, Sam Rivers, and you've been around so many people in your life.
Mhm,
What did you take from the elder statesmen, the legends of jazz, that you
mhm.
in turn try to teach the younger generation about?
Um, well, to make it simple, a lot, two things. I really am concentrating consciously on being a good person,
Hmm.
you know, before music, and that transcends, that comes out in your music. Um, uh, I'm sorry, I went off a little bit. Can you tell me
No,
one
no,
more?
you're good. No, what did you learn from the legends and
Yeah,
elders?
gotcha. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. The okay now on the serious technical tip, what I learned from the elders is be on time, take care of business, practice, be serious, you know, uh, and well, I mean, I love Lester Boyd. He was a good friend of mine,
Hmm.
and he has this thing called serious fun. So, um, I just learned how to be very serious, you know, through the older guy. Also, the way that the older school cats played, there's so much wisdom. If you hear one note Eldridge plays, right? One just, or Clark Terry, or even Dizzy, Louis Armstrong. There's so much wisdom in one note,
Yeah.
So sometimes I just focus on one note sometimes, or I like it's a blindfold test. If somebody, after one phrase, I know who it is.
Yeah.
So uh I just learned to have your own identity too, because that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
Because when you hear one note, you know who it is, or you hear a phrase, Clark, Dizzy, Lester Young, So that was one of the things that I learned, to have your own voice from
Yeah.
the older school guys.
So at the end of the day, everyone, James, has a perception of you, family, friends, fans, but you ultimately run the show. What is your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Uh, um, you know what? I I'm still searching for that, but I I I want to encompass everything. I mean, or every musician, every aspect of life. Um, uh, I'm kind of what you call that? Um, uh, I'm as far as like trumpet is concerned, have so many, is a wide aspect, and I love. Don Cherry to Freddie Hubbard. I mean, what I'm trying to say is I'm really schizo when it comes to trumpet. And I like to get into each one of the trumpet players I love personality, musically,
Yeah.
you know. So I try to encompass all these guys into one, into me, you know. Uh, I mean, there's a bunch of obscure guys that I haven't even mentioned yet. I'm a
Yeah.
big fan of Blue Mitchell because when I was living in California, he has a big influence on me. I used to see Blue and Freddie, and Snooky Young was the same guy.
Yeah.
I mean, was the first guy that I saw playing plunger trumpet, which I'm kind of known for.
Yeah.
So I just want people to know that I'm a musical, worldly musician, and I listen to everything,
Yeah.
pretty much everything.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a big R&B guy. I'm a huge Tower of Power fan. Uh, Confunction and Ohio Players and and all the LA brass bands, all the LA funk bands, New Orleans bands, and all that stuff. So it's just a lot to encompass. It's just um, a, a worldly musician.
Yeah. So are you doing anything live? What's coming up for you in 2024 as we get into the warm months?
Yeah. Well, right now I'm doing. I'm working on this project. I'm a big band with Ted Nash. I don't know
Okay.
if you know. Yeah,
Yeah.
Ted Nash works. So he's a Witten's alto player. I think he plays second alto. He has a big band. We're playing at Dizzy's February 5th,
Okay.
which I'm looking forward to. He has challenging music and he's a great writer. I know him from the West Coast also.
Yeah.
He was I didn't know him, but I knew about him because we were there at the same time. He came to New York before me. So I'm working with Ted Nash, and I'm still working with Duke Ellington Orchestra. I think we got something coming up in March 1st at the Kennedy Center. I think it's a tribute to Duke Ellington featuring Lisa Fisher.
Okay.
Um, and just a little odd, odd things. I have to have my book in front of me actually because I got a few things going on. Yeah, so I got the Duke Ellington stuff going on. Um, I work a lot with a band. I'm working with there's a club in New York called Ornithology,
Yeah.
and I'm working with the Fat Cat Big Band there on February 22nd. Um, yeah, and yeah, so yeah, I got a few things going on. We're playing at the Kennedy Center with the Ellington Man March 15th. That's what it is.
Okay. Cool. Cool.
And
So
also, I play in the bassy band still every night, as I said.
right on. Well, James, man, this has been an honor and a pleasure. Thank you, sir, for taking time out to talk to Neon Jazz. I
And
appreciate it.
I'm totally honored. I appreciate you and Kerry Gaffney for hooking this up.
Absolutely.